3 years ago, my midwife helped me guide my newborn onto my chest. I don't think I even gave myself a moment before words from parenting books and blogs scrambled through my head, and I guided her to nurse for the very first time. This was my best impression of being the kind of woman who knew how to have it all. I have big footsteps to follow in. My own mother had been a working wife, communally involved, and a dedicated mom. She volunteered so much at my elementary school that my kindergarten teacher used her as an example extensively in his PhD thesis on the positive impacts of parent involvement in early education. She ran carpools, won awards for exceeding sales goals, and held a seat on our synagogue's board. And me? I was a mom now too. And yet, my brilliant, creative, starving artist husband and I brought our newborn home to a tiny Brooklyn basement apartment that we could barely afford with our entry-level day jobs while we struggled to make our dreams our real careers. On paper, I had it all. The encouragement to go for my dreams, the marriage to my soulmate, and the doll-faced, healthy baby girl. And yet, somehow, no part of me felt like I had it all, or like I was doing it successfully. If you, like me, were raised to believe that you could do anything you wanted to do, you might know this feeling well. If you were brought up with your parents and community pouring their time, expertise, and money into developing your potential, you too might feel like you owe a debt to society to make the most of yourself and be all that you can be. And if the value of potential was drilled into you so firmly in your upbringing, you might also judge your successes and failures and career and relationships by the potential that they hold rather than by their actual reality. You might also know that you have the potential to do it all and be it all, theoretically and somehow. And like me, you might wonder, how do I get there? And how do I know I am there? There's no escaping it. This comes at us from all sides. I think I escape it as I turn off my phone just before sundown every Friday night and usher in a forced break from worldly expectations with the lighting of 3 flames. This escape dissipates within about an hour as I hear my husband's cantorial voice grace my Shabbat table, and he and our guests begin to chant, Eishet Chayil mi'imsa. I am so lucky to hear this beautiful psalm sung to me each week. But this Eishet Chayil, this woman of valor who has grace and all these wonderful attributes, supposedly this ideal Jewish wife and ideal Jewish woman I am being, since it's sung to me every week. But the Eishet Chayil burns the candle at both ends and somehow still has good health and isn't cranky. Her husband adores and respects her, her children cherish her, and she has a flourishing business. Somehow, her house is also still presentable for guests. Some weeks, I'm proud of myself for the lines in the song I have managed to achieve. And some weeks, instead of feeling that pride, or even the happiness that my husband dedicates himself to singing this every week, I feel worse instead of better. Not only does the secular world expect us to have, do, and be it all, the Jewish world does too. Fills me with a little bit of panic. While I've always known that Jewish texts are filled with parables, the stories are meant to inspire possible action and reasonable goals. But the Eishet Chayil, who gets no sleep, even cooks for her servants. How is that supposed to be reasonable for most women to achieve? So I comforted myself with the ways that my inner Yenta best knows how, with complaints and objections. Well, you know, she's got servants and the income from a thriving business and beautiful clothes, which we all know make us feel so much better. I have none of that. So obviously, how could I achieve it? And with all these objections and obstacles in my way, I realized I must be missing the message. So I took a breath, stepped back, and thought, well, we're the people of the book, so let's take a look at the book. Ruth is the first woman to be called an Eishet Chayil. She's the paradigmatic convert and the progenitor of the line of King David. And her story is even richer and more powerful than that. Born to Moabite nobility and marrying into Jewish gentry, Ruth's story is a wow. She got married with this image in mind. Wealthy family with a wealthy patriarch, aristocratic matriarch, 2 fine sons marrying their nobility-born and Jewishly converted wives. It's a nice picture. And then, as happens in life, misfortune struck. And this family became 3 impoverished widows. And yet, Ruth chose to stick by her mother-in-law Naomi's side rather than return to the comfort of her own father's home. She set off with only one relationship to her name, to the strange to her land of Bethlehem. When she reached this strange land far from home, Ruth learned that in order for her Naomi to eat, she would have to toil with her own hands to collect the scraps of the crops left after the gleaning. And this Moabite princess got to work, and she collected from edge to edge of the fields. Through a determination to follow a path through, dedication to the fact that the Jewish people was now hers and she was theirs in turn, and a little bit of good intuition, Ruth's story goes from riches to rags, and then back again as she marries the wealthy landowner, cousin to her late father-in-law, and Jewish sage Boaz. But the interesting thing is that Ruth isn't called an Eishet Chayil until after all of this. Throughout the book of Ruth, we see her journey. And we reach Ruth 3:11 and watch as she becomes the Eishet Chayil, through not only her successes and her failures, but her reaction to circumstance. Ruth carefully selects tools from her potential, has faith in her community, and uses what's around her to get through. Often, this means that chesed, kindness, is utilized throughout. And we watch as she both gives and receives with humility, gratitude, and grace. Perhaps most importantly, though, we learn an Eishet Chayil is not a perfect person. She's a work in progress. And her secret is that she doesn't try to do it all alone. Like Ruth, we must face our reality. And our reality, as I stand here on stage and you guys sit here in the audience, is that we live in the individualistic culture of America. This individualism has permeated even secluded segments of Jewish society. And we've decided that personal individual responsibility is the precursor for and reason for anything that we achieve and the things that we don't. And American women, we're told that we can have, do, be it all to everyone all the time. We're supposed to learn and then do. We're told that we should be able to expect to do this all alone, Or maybe, if we're lucky, with the help from a marital partner who, let's be honest, sometimes seems like they bring more responsibilities than relief. And yet, we're supposed to be able to do all of this because we are supposed to be enough. Thankfully, Judaism has a slightly different idea. In Jewish thought, we learn that we are expected to do, be, and have it all, but only in community. Ruth knew this and taught us all when she said, "Your people will be my people." And she gives us a guide path that we can follow. Know that we are works in progress. Recognize your own talents and capabilities and what you can do now, and objectively observe your surroundings and see what supports are available. Have the long term in mind and give what you can, not more and also not less. And also, maybe the hardest for us, ask for what you need, not more and not less. As you aspire to find your valor, pinpoint, turn to, and nurture a space where you can rely on community and community can rely on you. 3 years ago, I couldn't achieve my dreams because I had nowhere I felt safe leaving my daughter so that I could get my work done. My communities were too disjointed. My parents were too busy and lived too far away for a weekly commitment. And my friends also all had their own lives. And sure, I had plenty of people that I could spend Shabbat with, and a lot of them were young professionals and were young couples and parents just like myself. And yet, we would sit there and talk about the tax implications of being a creative and about how we wanted to be able to find affordable and reasonable childcare for the kids we already had or wanted to bring into the world soon. Yet these fellow creatives, freelancers, editors, and artists and I, our lives were so frenetic that we could only be in community on Shabbat, and we could only support each other with words. But I wanted these people to be the ones that I traded childcare with and that I hired to do my graphic design or ghostwriting. And I wanted to be hired by them for an editing gig or to be put on stage in front of their organization to give a talk. So I'm doing my part now. I've imagined this space of collaborative Jewish workspaces, a network both virtual and local, where we can be our most important selves, like our parent self and our professional self, or our spiritual self, simultaneously. It uses the corners of our fields, like the leftover rooms in Jewish institutions, wondering where their people are. And I invite you, as you become an Eishet Chayil or an Ish Chayil, to support our fellow freelancers, artists, and creatives. When you're at the point where you feel like you have no favors left to ask, or you don't want to ask your best friend or neighbor for help, someone from the community of Jewish work-at-home moms and pops, JWOMP, I call it, will be there to help. I know that I can have, do, and be it all. I also know I can't do it alone. And now that I know better, why would I want to? We have the answer key. In order to be our best and fullest selves, all we have to do is give and take in community.